Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday afternoon, June 22nd. We've been following the tropical situation in the Atlantic Basin, and we'll focus on that at the onset of this video discussion. Then we'll talk about the weather pattern that has evolved for the eastern part of the nation, including the Mid-Atlantic region, where it's been very dry in recent weeks. So we'll talk about that after we get through the tropical situation. Tropical storm Brett, at the latest report, has sustained winds of 70 miles per hour, very close to minimal hurricane status. If it gets up to 74 miles per hour in terms of sustained winds, it would become a hurricane. Probably about a 50-50 chance of that happening over the next 6 to 12 hours or so. It does continue to look like it will undergo a weakening phase once it pushes into the Caribbean Sea. There's a second system on its heels that will take a slightly different track, and we'll talk about that as well. Here's the latest official map by the National Hurricane Center. Brett, right here, again, with 70 mile per hour sustained winds. All it has to do is get up to 74 to reach hurricane status, and it may or may not do that before some weakening takes place. The track looks like it'll push it into the Caribbean Sea by tomorrow, and then it'll move in this general westward track across the central and eventually into the western Caribbean. And it's in this area where it will encounter two factors that should cause it to weaken: increased wind shear and an entanglement with some dry air. That dry air originated over northern Africa. The Saharan desert, dusty air mass moved westward over the Atlantic, and there's a concentration of that dry air right in this region right here. So that, combined with some increasing wind shear, will cause Brett to weaken over the upcoming weekend into the early part of next week. Meanwhile, right on its heels, a system that could very well become a tropical storm. If so, it would be named Cindy. Looks like it'll take more of a northwest track in this fashion, and it too does not have real strong prospects longer term. It looks like it will go on more of a northwest track, but probably weaken as well when it gets into the southwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean. So again, these are the two systems that are being closely monitored right now, and there's actually a couple more waves we'll see on satellite imagery in a moment here. Well, here it is, in fact, a satellite imagery loop using the Goes East satellite. It's what we call geocolors, kind of a composite, and we're looking at the tropical part of the Atlantic Ocean. Here are the Lesser Antilles Islands, the Windward Islands, right in this chain right here, the Caribbean Sea, just to the west of that island chain. And here is Brett. Not all that scary looking right now, but again, it's close to a minimal hurricane. Let's call it a very strong tropical storm right now. Sustained winds at 70 miles per hour. Here is the second system, and on the heels there's more tropical waves closer to the west coast of Africa. Again, there'll be drier air associated with that Saharan desert air mass that moved into the Atlantic Basin over the past several days. There's kind of a concentration of it over the central part of the Caribbean, and there will be some increasing wind shear as Brett moves into the Caribbean Sea area. So even if it does reach hurricane status over the next few hours, it will very likely then undergo a weakening process as it crosses over into the central and western part of the Caribbean. Meanwhile, the second system, which would be named Cindy if it reaches tropical storm status, looks like it'll take more of a northwesterly track, not into the Caribbean Sea, but more likely into the southwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean, and it too would eventually undergo a weakening phase before ever reaching the U.S. East Coast. Of course, we'll continue to closely monitor both of these over the next several days. Well, before we shift our attention to the continental U.S., let's take one last look at the tropical situation. This is the very latest, the 12Z, the morning run of the GFS model, and I wanted to just take a look at these tropical systems. Here it is right now reflected at midday today. from the operational GFS model. 999 millibar low here. Very strong tropical storm right now. And let's just move forward and watch what happens. That particular system continues to move to the west. Here is the forecast tomorrow morning, Friday morning, and notice it weakens from a 990 low currently to a 10,004 millibar tropical low as of early tomorrow. It continues to move to the west into the central Caribbean Sea. By the time we get to Saturday, it's weakened now from a 999 all the way to a 1007 millibar low. Meanwhile, here's that second system. As of Saturday morning, it takes a farther north and west track than Brett, avoids the Caribbean Sea and cuts up into the southwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean here and all the way out to Sunday morning. Relatively weak system here, a 10,011 millibar tropical system here by the time we get to Sunday morning. So again, both of these systems don't appear to have a real impressive future in terms of strength, as they look like they'll both tend to weaken as we get into the weekend and into the early part of next week. Well, now let's shift our attention back to the continental U.S. And again, the eastern third of the nation is undergoing quite a transition to a wetter weather pattern, including the mid-Atlantic region that began a couple of days ago, and looks like there'll be a threat of showers and thunderstorms in the mid-Atlantic region, for example, all the way through next week. Certainly, by no means will it be raining all the time, but there'll be the threat of showers and thunderstorms each and every day through the weekend and through much of next week. And here is one of the reasons why we have this vast trough sitting over the Tennessee Valley, and it's having an impact throughout the eastern third of the nation. We'll just move forward here, and we'll see how this evolves here. By the time we get to tomorrow morning, that upper level low tends to push to the north, and with it will come a push to the north with that moisture field from the southern part of the Mid-Atlantic region into the northern part of the Mid-Atlantic region later tonight into the day tomorrow. Not much rain falling today in the Mid-Atlantic region, but I expect more rainfall tonight and tomorrow, and some of that rain later tonight and tomorrow could very well be heavy at times in the Mid-Atlantic region with this system pushing up to the north. And then we'll move forward here into the upcoming weekend. Here we are on Saturday morning, and that trough, that upper level trough, sits over the eastern part of the Great Lakes. And you'll notice another system starting to push into the northern plains. So this will hang around right into the weekend, and right on its heels, this next system by Sunday morning will be over the upper part of the Midwest. And here's the opening of that first upper level low over the Mid-Atlantic region comes Sunday morning, but right on its heels comes that next system, and this will enhance chances of showers and thunderstorms early next week, especially I think late Monday into Tuesday. There could be some heavy rain associated with this particular system, and it won't be long before yet another system pushes up to the same general location up across the northern plains by the middle part of next week, the upper part of the Midwest, and that too looks like it will then drop to the south and east right into the eastern Great Lakes and perhaps into the Mid-Atlantic region by the end of next week. So really there's a very unsettled look to the overall weather pattern for the Mid-Atlantic region, for much of the Midwest, eastern U.S. really in general, and not only over the next couple of days, but right through much of next week. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps from the 12Z, this morning's run of the operational GFS. And again, not much going on right now in the Mid-Atlantic region, but we'll see as we get into the evening hours, especially overnight hours and into the day on Friday, this rain starts to push to the north. We saw a moment ago the upper level low pushes to the north, and so will this precipitation shield on Friday, for example, that encompasses most of Pennsylvania and starts to moisten up across southern part of New England as well by midday on Friday. And we'll move forward in time into the upcoming weekend, and maybe a diminishing of the showers and thunderstorms by the time we get to early Saturday, but give a little bit of heating, and all of a sudden it pops up kind of explodes on the radar probably come late morning on Saturday into the midday hours. Showers and thunderstorms with a warmer atmosphere. Today is unseasonably cool throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. High temperatures some 10 to 15 degrees below normal. We start to turn warmer on Friday, and especially Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Temperatures should be well up in the 80s. Places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, but again, way below normal today. Unseasonably cool. Here we are on Saturday afternoon in a similar situation Saturday night. Then on Sunday, maybe a bit of a break in the action on Sunday with more isolated showers and thunderstorms. But then we saw upstream, there'll be that next upper level trough. And watch what happens as it dives to the south and east. By the time we get into late Monday night, potential for some significant rainfall in the Mid-Atlantic region. That upper level low sitting over the eastern Great Lakes, a frontal system pushing into the Mid-Atlantic region, really all the way through the eastern third of the nation, could enhance showers and thunderstorms late Monday night time frame into the day on Tuesday, and it certainly remains unsettled through much of next week. This is Tuesday, and then we get into Wednesday, evening hours, still some unsettled conditions here, and then that third wave in the upper part of the atmosphere moves again to the northern plains, then towards the Great Lakes, and it very likely increases shower and thunderstorm activity by the time we get to the end of next week in the eastern part of the nation. So Tropical Storm Brent may or may not reach hurricane status, but whether it does, it will then undergo a weakening phase over the upcoming weekend as it encounters wind shear and dry air over the Caribbean Sea. Meanwhile, the second tropical system takes more of a northwest track, avoids the Caribbean Sea, and moves towards the southwestern Atlantic, where it too looks like it'll eventually weaken before ever reaching the U.S. East Coast. Of course, we'll continue to monitor closely those tropical systems. Meanwhile, the eastern third of the nation will have quite a wet weather pattern over the next several days. Doesn't mean it will rain all the time, but there'll be pretty much a daily threat of showers and thunderstorms throughout much of the east, not only today, tomorrow, but right through the weekend and right through much of next week. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.